is the BBC Home Service. Here is the 9 o'clock news of today. The Colonial Office has published a report detailing the social and economic impact of West Indian immigration to the United Kingdom. During the past decade, several thousand residents of Jamaica, Trinidad and British Guiana have arrived in Southampton and Tilbury docks to seek new employment in the United Kingdom.
Got magic, got that load. John up, gone higher, all aboard.
People are really rather afraid that this country might be rather swamped by people with a different culture. The British character has done so much for democracy, for law, and done so much throughout the world that if there's any fear that it might be swamped, people are going to react and be rather hostile to those coming in.
We will fight you back, and we'll fight you with every bone, every nerve, every feeling, every ounce of blood we've got. We will have our country back!
The late Sir Winston Churchill, he invited us. He said England was into a rut. And England needs tradesmen, professionals, and England needs volunteers. And then we came.
Because after the war, there was a shortage of manpower. And a lot of my student friends, they accepted the call and they came. And I was one of them that in 1954, I accepted the call and I came to this country, the mother country.
Well, it's a job to know where to start. There are so many of us doing so many different things. In the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, in Air Sea Rescue and the Marines. In the RENS, the ATS, the WAF and the nursing services.
The government of this country had said for all you soldiers, they were calling them Commonwealth soldiers, that came, once the job was over, get back to where you come from. And that's what they did. As soon as the war was over and all the celebrations was finished, the people themselves were saying, what are you doing here?
I came to this country when I was 19. And I lived, my sister came after me, my big sister, I came first and she came after me. And we both lived together. And I said I would like to be a nurse. I made applications in different hospitals. They didn't bother. Some of them didn't bother to answer the application. But the few that answered it turned their nose up at me and said no.
The journey was a little bit rough.
I took a plane.
I came by plane, yes.
We came by boat.
Came with, they call it now BA, but in the days gone by it was
BOAC. And I've kept this all these years, 44 years.
The airport, unlike our little airport in Kingston, it was vast. And just stepping down and yes, it was, to me, it was the beginning of an adventure.
Well, when I leave Jamaica, I came up by ship. And it took me 21 days to get to England.
The journey across the Atlantic, it was evil.
It was a very difficult experience I had because we had a storm in the sea. The sea was rough and I was ill all the way coming up.
I came here in 1955 on a Columbia, SS Columbia from Trinidad.
In the boat, everybody had their own quarters and so on. And we took 11 days and came to Liverpool.
It was 14 days on sea, and it was very interesting, but it was very cold and sometimes miserable. But we all enjoyed it because it was coming to a new place for a new different life.
When we put to sea, there was one young man who did a very sad thing. We were sitting together, and then he was so upset, he ran and he jumped overboard, and there he was drowned. And all I could hear, the friend said, Ali, Ali, man overboard.
Now, it was cold. I think it was January or February. So that, you know, the overcoat, some of us slept in it.
When winter came, that was something else.
It was a horrible, I think it's the last great fog we had in London.
To experience the coldness for the first time.
You could not touch your ears because you thought you had lost it, because it was so cold. Or ice frost in your nose, you couldn't touch your nose or your ears.
The weather at the time when I came here, the snow, and it was a very wintry time. But they have a saying, if you want good, your nose have to run.
It was very, very bad winter the first year. However, because you're in a strange country, you have to survive somehow. We did.
We were come prepared to work hard and put up with all the hardship that was there. Sometimes you feel your hands, you're wondering if it's your own hand. Your feet and everything, you know, are all chilled blades. But you have to work.
In London, it was cold and miserable and everything. You had fog. You didn't know, you had to know where you're living because the bus drops you there. And you got to find your way in, you got to know where you is, you got to know where you are, or else you can't reach home.
The Great Fog not only did its best to keep shipping tied up, it made things very unpleasant for everybody.
Because you see the conductor used to be in the front with a lamp, and call his stops in as he goes. And you got to remember which stop you are. Come off, then when you come off the bus, then you got to find the place, find where you are, because the fog was bad.
Fog, the longest and thickest on record, brings Britain its darkest days since the blackout. It gives transport services an even bigger headache than bank holiday.
And I'll always remember this, how kind this man was, young man. It was just, you couldn't see before you, and I was stuck. Couldn't get home, and he actually took me to Chancery Lane tube station and told me, you know, where to change, how to get back home, and I've never forgotten that. Now, you know, you wouldn't be walking along in the thick fog with somebody like that.
There were no central heating in those days. It was coal fires and paraffin heaters, which was something very unusual for somebody coming from a tropical country, not knowing what to expect.
It's the SO bleed doer. You know, it burns without smell.
When the paraffin man comes, we've got to go outside, take the tin outside for him to put the paraffin in, and when we're coming back into the house, we have to lift it up. We couldn't, if it was a bit heavy, and we weren't allowed to put it down to rest our arms. We had to take it straight upstairs in our bedroom, and we couldn't leave it on the stairs. He wouldn't have that. So in that room, we also had that paraffin heater, plus the container that had the paraffin in.
All paraffin heaters, no matter what kind, need a continuous flow of air to prevent poisonous fumes from building up. So keep a window or ventilator open.
Paraffin heaters were the most dangerous things. Got to pay money and get a good one, or else a lot of kids and people die from it. Because those they used to flare up. All of a sudden, buy a cheap one and flare up.
It was risky, but we had to leave the heater on to warm us up through the night. When you get up in the mornings, your nostrils would be clogged up went on, it was when you try to wash your face or something like this, all black smoke coming from your nostrils, and your coat, you had nowhere except just to throw the coat down anywhere. And when you going to work in the mornings, everybody would say to you on the bus, "Oh, your coat stinks." Well, I'm saying it in a different accent now. Your coat stinks, you know, you got paraffin on your coat. But there was nothing else we could do.
We had a friend, the two of us, me and my cousin, and the friend was living in Essex, a place called Boofen. He was the guiding light of us coming here. He said to us, when you come, make sure you come to my place. But what we didn't realize, that he didn't have a place. He was staying with an English family, and that English family had 3 children, a husband and a wife. And we really shouldn't have gone.
When I first arrived, I stayed with one of my cousins in Clapton. And that is what really threw me. I wish when I look around, I thought, oh gosh, I wish I didn't come. Because my expectation was homes, you know, that everybody has a home, back home individual, you'd have your own home and so. But when I look and I saw there was this 1, 2, 3-story building, and each room, if they had 5 rooms, there were 5 different families.
We knocked on the door, and this lady said, "Come in." And my friend Lester, his name is, he was furious. He said, I said to come, but you weren't meant to come. Not directly to this house, because this is a family house, and there's no room for you. The husband was at work, and the lady, the wife said, "Come in, sit down." What else could she have said? And when the husband came home the evening about 6 o'clock, the husband said, he shook our hands, glad to see us, and he asked us, first words out of his mouth was, "Where are you staying?" We said, "Here." And he said, "I'm sorry, you can't stay here." But where can we go? In an area, it was a residential area, where could you turn? And he said, "Look, you know, I know what I would do, and I do remember this quite clearly. You could stay here until you find somewhere to live."
In those days, people used to say that England is paved with, the streets are paved with gold, but I can tell you it wasn't.
It wasn't easy in England in 1955 to walk out the door and find somewhere to live. It was all right if you were white, and that white, I must make quite clear, if you were Irish, you would know no way from your accent would they accept you, and me, with my ready, recognizable who I was, didn't have a chance. Anyway, I left, and I got into Brentwood High Street, midday, and I looked around, couldn't see a thing. I was the only black person really on the streets, as you can imagine then. I was desperate. I went into a pub, and the bar was full of people, and as I walked in, opened the door, you could imagine what was said. I didn't hear it. I was oblivious to it. Naive and stupidity, call it, for want of a word. I walked into the pub, and one fellow came up to me and said to me, "Hello, Sonny, would you like to have a drink?" And he took me to one side. We sat down and we talked, and he said to me, "I've traveled the world because I was on a ship. I know about you fellas, I know about your people, and I got a house, my wife is dead, my daughter's at home with her husband. Would you like to come and stay with us?" Because I told him I was looking for somewhere. And he took me home.
Take a pinch of white man, wrap it up in black skin, add a touch of blue blood, and a little bitty bit of red Indian boy. Oh, what a beautiful dream, if it could only come true, you know. What we need is a great big America.